In 1950, more than 5 million American families still lived on a working farm. 10 years later, nearly 2 million of those farms were gone. Not sold, not modernized, gone. And with them went a way of living that no house built today can imitate, no matter how much shiplap you nail to the wall. Number 14 was the hardest day of the week, and women defended it like a sacrament. Number 9 was money the government never counted, controlled entirely by women, and it kept whole families afloat. And number 3 is where every important conversation in rural America actually happened. These weren't luxuries. Most of them cost almost nothing. But together they made a house feel like it belonged to somebody. Hit subscribe if you grew up in a house like this, or wish you had. Let's count down from number 25. Number 25, the screen door with the coil spring. Every farmhouse had one, and every farmhouse had the same sound. That long, stretching creak as the door pulled open, then the slap of wood against frame as the spring yanked it shut behind you. Mothers hollered about it for 30 years, and nobody ever fixed it because nobody actually wanted it fixed. That slap was information. It told your mother somebody was home. It told the dog to get up. It told the kitchen that the men were in from the field and dinner had better be moving. The door itself was cheap pine with wire mesh, maybe $4 from the lumber yard, patched with a square of screen and a dab of solder wherever a boot went through it. In summer, the wooden door behind it stayed open from May to September, and the house breathed through that screen. Modern doors close on a silent hydraulic hinge. Nobody knows you came home. Number 24, the mailbox at the end of the gravel lane. Rural free delivery had been running since 1896, but in the 1950s, that tin box on a cedar post was still the thread connecting a farm to the rest of the world. Sending a child down the lane to get the mail was a chore and a privilege at the same time. A quarter-mile of dust and grasshoppers each way. Inside was everything. The seed catalog in January that got read like scripture. The Sears Roebuck book, over 1,000 pages, that doubled as a wish list, a booster seat, and eventually as paper in the outhouse. Letters from a son in the service. The bank statement everybody dreaded. The little red flag going up meant something was going out, which meant a decision had been made. Today, mail arrives at a curb 30 feet from the door, and nobody walks out for it with any hope at all. Number 23, linoleum floors worn through in the shape of a woman. Real linseed linoleum, the kind made from linseed oil and cork dust pressed onto burlap, ran about $1 a square yard in 1953, and it went down in every farm kitchen in America because it could take mud, milk, coal ash, and 4 kids. Mama picked the pattern out of a catalog, little bricks or faded roses or a fake tile that fooled nobody. And within about 6 years, you could read her life in it. There was a worn pale spot in front of the sink where the pattern had scrubbed away entirely. Another at the stove, a trail between the two. Nobody thought of it as damage. It was proof of work. Modern flooring is engineered to look identical for 20 years and then get torn out. It never records anything. It never shows anyone that a woman stood in one place for 10,000 hours. Number 22, the free calendar from the feed store. It hung on a nail by the kitchen door, printed by the local elevator, the implement dealer, or the seed company, and it was the single most important document in the house. Not because of the picture, though the picture mattered, usually a pheasant, a farm scene, or a girl in a hayfield that made the preacher's wife uncomfortable. It mattered because of the writing on it. Every square held a note in pencil. when the sow was bred, when the hens started laying, 2 inches of rain, frost, Dr. Tuesday, bill paid, cow died. That calendar was the farm's memory, and at the end of the year it went in a drawer instead of the burn barrel because a man might need to know what the weather did in April of 1954. It was free. It was advertising. And it recorded more honest family history than most Bibles. Number 21. Oilcloth on the kitchen table. Before vinyl tablecloths, before wipe clean anything, there was oilcloth. Cotton duck, sealed with linseed oil, sold off a bolt at the dry goods store for around 39 cents a yard in checks and flowers and fruit patterns that got brighter the more the sun hit them. It smelled faintly of paint. It cracked at the table's edge after a couple of years and got flipped, then patched with tape, then finally cut down to fit the smaller table in the back porch. Oilcloth meant a kitchen table was a workbench, not furniture. You could butcher a chicken on it, roll out pie dough on it, help a child with fractions on it, and sponge the whole thing clean in 20 seconds. Nothing precious, nothing protected. The center of the house was designed to be used hard, and that was the entire point. Number 20. The wood box behind the stove. The wood box was a child's job, and it was the job that taught you what winter actually meant. Split wood stacked in the box by the range, kindling underneath, corn cobs in a bushel basket beside it because dry cobs light fast and cost nothing. It had to be full before supper and full again before bed, and if you slacked, everyone knew by 5 in the morning when the fire had gone cold and the whole house was 50 degrees. Kids ran that box from age 6 or 7. There was no allowance attached. It was simply understood that the house did not stay warm by itself, and that you were part of the reason it stayed warm at all. That's a thing a thermostat can never give a child. A modern kid can grow up entirely unaware that heat has a source. Number 19. Kerosene lamps and the night the line came. Here's what people forget. In 1935, barely 1 farm in 10 had electricity. Even after the Rural Electrification Administration strung wire across the country, plenty of farms didn't get hooked up until the late 40s or early 50s, and some holdouts and hill farms waited even longer. So in living memory, evening in a farmhouse meant filling the lamps, trimming the wicks, and washing the glass chimneys with newspaper because a rag left lint. Light was a resource you spent deliberately. The family gathered in one room around one lamp because that's where the light was, and that's a large part of why families in that era talked to each other. Then the line came, and the story every rural family tells is the same. Somebody pulled a chain, one bare bulb lit the kitchen, and grown men stood there and cried. We got light. We lost the room where everyone sat together. Number 18. The Hoosier Cabinet. Before built-in cabinets, the farm kitchen had one freestanding piece of furniture that did everything. A Hoosier cabinet, made in Indiana and shipped everywhere, cost around $30 new, but most farmhouses had a hand-me-down. On top, a tin flour bin with a sifter built into the bottom, so you cranked flour straight down onto the work surface. A sugar bin beside it. A pull-out porcelain enamel counter that slid forward when Mama needed more room to roll dough. Little racks for spice tins. A slot for the recipe cards nobody actually followed. It was a workstation designed by people who understood that a woman baked bread twice a week and did not have time to hunt for anything, everything within reach of one standing position. Modern kitchens spread a cook across 30 feet of granite and call it luxury. That cabinet knew better 70 years ago. Number 17. The pie safe with punched tin panels. Look at the tin panels on an old pie safe, and you'll see hearts, stars, tulips, sometimes a whole scene punched by hand with a nail. That wasn't decoration for its own sake. Those holes let air move so cooling pies didn't sweat and go soggy, while keeping flies out in a house with no screens and no refrigeration. A safe held pies, bread, a covered dish of leftovers, and it sat in the kitchen or the back hall where it stayed cool. And here's the part that gets me. Some farmer or tinsmith sat down with a hammer and punched a tulip pattern into a piece of sheet metal that only existed to keep flies off a pie. Nobody made him do that. The plainest, most practical households in America still made room for something beautiful, and they made it out of scrap. Number 16, the cast iron kitchen range. Long after electric stoves came to town, the wood and coal range stayed in a lot of farm kitchens because it did more than cook. It heated the room. It heated the water in a reservoir on the side, which is where the dishwater came from and where a baby's bath was warmed. It dried mittens on the warming shelf above. It proofed bread on the back corner. It sat there radiating all day, and it was the reason the kitchen was the only genuinely comfortable room in the house from November to March. Running it was a skill. You learned which wood burned hot and fast for frying, and which held steady for a slow oven. And you judged temperature by holding your hand inside and counting. There was no dial. A woman who could bake a Level Angel food cake on that range was, and I mean this, an engineer. Number 15, the percolator going at 5 in the morning. The stovetop percolator was a fixture on every farm range in America, aluminum or blue speckled enamelware, and it started before anybody was awake. Chores came before breakfast. Cows don't wait. So the pot went on first, and by the time the men came in from the barn with cold hands and the smell of hay on them, the whole house smelled like coffee that had been boiling for 40 minutes and was strong enough to strip paint. That percolating sound, the little rhythmic knock of water hitting the glass knob on the lid, was the sound of the day beginning. And the pot never really got emptied. It got reheated at noon and again at 3 and offered to anybody who pulled into the yard. Coffee wasn't a beverage. It was the standing invitation the whole house extended to everyone who came up the lane. Number 14, Monday wash day and the ringer. Monday was wash day and it was brutal. Water hauled or pumped, heated on the range in a copper boiler, whites boiled first, then colors, then work clothes last, in the same increasingly gray water because you did not waste it. A Maytag ringer washer, running $70 or $80 in the early 1950s, agitated the load, then you fed each piece through 2 rubber rollers by hand. Every farm woman in America knew somebody who'd caught an arm in a ringer. Then it all went on the line, and in January it froze solid, and the shirts came in like sheet metal and thawed on chairs by the stove. It took the entire day, which is exactly why Monday was also the day neighbors' wives visited, why children played underfoot in the steam, and why a bedsheet dried outside in June still ranks as the best smell in the English language. Number 13, dresses made out of feed sacks. This is the one that tells you everything about the ERA. Flour, sugar, and livestock feed came in printed cotton sacks, and the mills knew exactly what farm women were doing with them. So they hired designers and printed florals, plaids, and prints for children. Farm wives would come to the feed store and pick out the pattern, then make their husband go back for a 3rd sack of the same print because a dress took 3. 25 pounds of feed came home wearing next spring's dress. The sacks became aprons, shirts, curtains, dish towels, quilt backs, and eventually rags. A single yard of that cotton might serve a family for 15 years in 4 different forms. Nobody called it sustainable. They called it not being wasteful, and there was pride in it, not shame. The thriftiest generation in American history also dressed its daughters in flowers. Number 12. The quilting frame lowered from the ceiling. In a lot of farmhouses, the quilting frame hung on ropes and pulleys from the parlor ceiling, raised out of the way during the day and let down in the evening or when the women came. Because quilting was social. Neighbors and sisters and the church ladies gathered around one frame, and the talk that happened over those hours was how a rural community actually maintained itself. Who was sick? Who was struggling? Who was expecting? Which family needed help without having to ask for it out loud? The quilt itself was made of clothing scraps, so every square was a memory somebody could name. That was Grandpa's shirt. That was the dress you were baptized in. A modern blanket comes in a plastic bag from a warehouse. Those quilts were an archive, a support network, and a heating system all at once, and every stitch was somebody's afternoon. Number 11. The dinner bell on the post. Out by the back door stood a post with a cast-iron bell on it, and it had a language. One long ring at noon meant dinner was on the table, and you had about 10 minutes. Ringing it hard, over and over, at any other hour meant something was badly wrong, and every neighbor within 2 miles stopped what they were doing and looked toward your place. Fire, injury, a man under a tractor. That bell carried farther than a voice, farther than a car horn, and there was no other way to reach a man working a field 80 acres out. Children were not allowed to touch it, ever, and every farm kid tested that rule exactly once. We replaced it with a text message that says, "Food's ready," which does the same job, but never once made a neighbor drop his pitchfork and run. Number 10. Egg money. Here's the part of farm history that almost never gets told. The hens belonged to the wife. She fed them, gathered the eggs, candled them, packed the crates, and hauled them to town, and the money she got from the produce house was hers. Same for cream and butter. In a good week, that might be a few dollars, which doesn't sound like much until you understand that it bought the groceries, the shoes, the school supplies, and the fabric, while the crop check came once a year and went straight to the bank and the seed dealer. During bad years, in the Depression and after, egg money was the only cash entering a lot of farms for months at a time. Women were quietly running the household economy of rural America out of a chicken coop, and no census ever wrote it down properly. Number 9. The root cellar. Dug into a hillside or under the house, walls of stone or poured concrete, the root cellar held the year. Potatoes in bins under straw, carrots buried in damp sand, cabbages hung by their roots, apples on slatted shelves, spaced so one rotten one couldn't ruin the row. And the canning, hundreds of quart jars glinting in rows, tomatoes, beans, peaches, beets, pickles, jam, the entire summer's labor converted into glass. A serious farm wife put up 500 jars in a season, and standing in that cellar in January, looking at the shelves, was how a family knew it was going to be all right. It smelled like earth and vinegar and cold. That was food security you could see with your own eyes. We now have more food than any people in history, and almost nobody has that feeling anymore. Number 8. The summer kitchen. Cooking on a wood range in August turns a farmhouse into a furnace, So a lot of farms had a second kitchen, sometimes a separate small building in the yard, sometimes an enclosed back porch with a second stove and a long table. From June through canning season, that's where everything happened. The butchering, the corn, the tomatoes, the jelly, the water bath canner going for 6 hours at a stretch. Kids shelled peas out there on the steps. The whole thing was thick with steam and the smell of dill and scalded tomato skins. And crucially, it kept the heat and the mess out of the house proper. Nobody builds a summer kitchen now because nobody processes 800 pounds of produce at home. But that little building was where a farm family's entire year of eating was decided, and it was the loudest, busiest room they had. Number 7, the milk house and the cream separator. Just outside the barn stood the milk house, usually concrete, always cold, with a tank of well water where the cans sat to chill. Inside was the Delaval separator, a hand-cranked machine with a stack of conical discs that spun whole milk fast enough to throw the cream out one spout and the skim out the other. You had to hold the crank at a steady speed, and there was a bell that rang if you slowed down. Kids cranked it, cream went to town and became actual money. Skim went to the hogs and the calves and into the house for baking. And every single one of those discs had to be washed by hand, every day, twice a day, or the whole batch soured. Bulk tanks and truck pickup ended it in the 60s. It was, hands down, the most hated chore on the American farm. Number 6, the windmill and the stock tank. That skeleton steel tower with the air motor fan on top was the tallest thing on the place, and it was the farm's water supply, pumping into a galvanized stock tank all day for free as long as the wind blew. Everyone on the farm read it constantly. If the tail turned, weather was changing. If it stopped in July, somebody was climbing up there in the heat to grease it, which was a job for whoever was youngest and least afraid. And the stock tank was the summer swimming pool. Kids climbed in among the algae and the water bugs with the cattle standing there watching. And it was cold, and it was the best part of the day. Electric submersible pumps made the whole thing obsolete. Those towers still stand in fields all over the Midwest, blades gone crooked, not pumping anything, just marking where a farm used to be. Number 5, the console radio in the front room. Before television reached rural America in any real numbers, the big wooden console radio was the household's only window out. And on a farm, it wasn't entertainment first, it was business. The noon markets, the weather. Whether to cut hay tomorrow was decided by a voice from Des Moines or Chicago, and the whole family shut up while it played. Then, in the evening, the same box gave you the National Barn Dance, the Grand Ole Opry on Saturday night, the serials, the fights, and news that arrived at the same moment in every farmhouse in the county, so you had something to talk about at church. It was furniture. It was polished. It had a doily on it. The entire family faced it in a semicircle, and when it was off, they faced each other instead. TV rearranged that room permanently. Number 4, the party line telephone. A crank telephone on the wall, oak box, 2 bells on top, and a line shared with anywhere from 4 to a dozen neighbors. Your family had a ring, 2 longs and a short. Everybody's ring rang in everybody's house, so everyone knew when you got a call, and there was nothing stopping Mrs. Kellerman down the road from lifting her receiver very gently and listening in. And she did. Everyone did. This drove people crazy, and it also meant that when a farmhouse caught fire or a child went missing, the operator could ring every house on the line at once, and the whole neighborhood knew inside a minute. It was gossip, and it was a rescue network, and it was the same system. Private lines came, and then cell phones, and rural America got its privacy and lost the last thing that made everyone's business. Number 3, the front porch in the evening. After supper, before bed, in any weather warmer than 50 degrees, people went out and sat on the porch. Not for a reason. There was no plan. Mother snapped beans. Dad rocked. Kids sat on the steps. And the whole neighborhood was doing exactly the same thing. So if a car came down the road, it slowed. And if it slowed, it stopped. And if it stopped, there was an hour of talk with somebody standing in the yard. Every important thing in rural life got said on a porch. Marriages were arranged there, land got sold there, grievances got aired, and then, mostly, forgiven there. It was unstructured time with the whole family in one place and the door open to whoever came by. AI conditioning ended it almost overnight. We went inside, closed the windows, and stopped seeing our neighbors. It happened that fast. Number 2, threshing dinners and the neighbors who showed up. Before the combine, harvest took a crew, and neighbors ran the ring, moving farm to farm with the threshing machine, which meant that 20 or 30 hungry men landed in your yard, and the women of the neighborhood fed them. 2 seatings at a table dragged out into the yard. Fried chicken, roast beef, mashed potatoes, gravy, 3 kinds of beans, sliced tomatoes, pickles, homemade bread, and 4 to 6 pies. Wash tubs of water and a bar of soap and a towel on a nail so the men could clean up. And every woman there knew she was being judged. And every woman there also knew she'd be judged the same way at the next farm on Thursday. It was competition, and it was pure mutual aid at the same time. When machinery let one man harvest alone, the work got easier, and the community that grew up around the work simply stopped existing. Number 1, the kitchen table and the door that was never locked. Everything came back to one table. It was where the family ate 3 meals a day together because there was nowhere else to be. It's where homework got done, and where seed was ordered, and where the bills got sorted into can pay and can't pay. It's where a man told his wife the price of hogs had dropped and what that meant. It's where the neighbors sat when somebody died, and where the casseroles landed, and where a preacher sat with his hat in his hands. And here's the thing that nobody under 50 can quite believe. That house was not locked. Not at night, not when the family left for town, not ever. There wasn't a key. If you came by and nobody was home, you let yourself in and left a note, or you sat down and waited, and you helped yourself to the coffee. Being welcome was the default setting of an entire way of life. That's what actually vanished. Not the oilcloth and the pie safe and the windmill. Those are just objects, and you can buy any of them at an auction on a Saturday. What you can't buy back is a house where the door had no lock because it never occurred to anybody that it should. So tell me in the comments which one your family had and which one you'd bring back tomorrow if you could. Mine's the porch. And if you know the story behind a farmhouse still standing somewhere in your family, tell it here, because that's the only place a lot of these stories live now.